Welcome, everybody. We have Mags Bonham today, and Mags' special niche in the world is digital cutting machines and digital machines that do stuff that we can use in our studios. So we had a lot of talk about crickets and silhouettes and that type of thing in Insiders several times. So I wanted to, and I don't know, I knew nothing, absolutely nothing about this topic. So I thought I would call in the expert and have Mags come talk to us and explain what these things are and how we can use them in our studio, sort of an introduction to the concept. So welcome, Mags, and
thank you.
Over to you.
Thank you. Well, I think I'll start sharing the screen. So I've got a few pictures that will help explain how all this got started. So some of the things that well, let me give you a little background of how I got to this place. So I've been working with polymer for about 20 plus years now. And around 2011, my husband is into craft beer, and he was the president of the homebrew club. And he said, you need to make hop jewelry because you're the first lady of beer. And I was like, okay, fine. So I started playing around with it. And of course, he wanted it to look just like a hop. And that wasn't the easiest thing in the world to do. I'll show you that in a second. But long story short, I started making them. A big, very popular brewery here in Vermont decided to start selling them. And it went so crazy that I had to figure out how to cut them without using the little aspic cutters that I was using to do that with. And so I started looking around at the digital cutters. And at the time, the PMC world was using the Cameo to engrave and cut their leather hard clay. And I watched videos, but I wasn't really sure that that was the way to go. It didn't seem like it was going to work for me. And I came across this. Cricut at the time had a fondant cutter. And I thought, well, fondant and polymer clay, that's basically the same thing. Let's do that. So we got one. I started playing around with it. It worked for what I needed it to do. And then a couple of years later, Cricut stopped really supporting it, and you had to design online, and they weren't working with the Mac upgrade. Long story short, I ended up buying a professional machine called a Silver Bullet. And I think I have some pictures of that. So on the top left, you'll see the hops as they really are, and then what I ended up making below. And as you can see, there's like 7 layers to each of those. So using those little aspic cutters for 7 layers for each earring got old pretty fast. And I was also doing these floral necklaces that was a lot of cookie cutter stuff. And these were things that I was able to do on the Cricut cake. So up there you can see that's the old version of the Cricut where everything was by cartridge and you had to design online, and it was really not that fun. And so the Silver Bullet is the one that I got, but it's a professional machine and it's quite pricey. And around that time, I want to say that it was maybe 2014. Allison Lee at Craftcast heard through a bird that I was cutting raw polymer clay with a digital cutter. And she had a lot of students at that time that were using the Cameo again for precious metal clay. And she said, can you do a class on it? And I said, I've never used a Cameo for this. I don't know if it can be done, but I certainly would like, I'll give it a try and let me see what I can do. And so I had a friend come over with her Cameo. We played with it all day. It wasn't working. And it would cut, but then it would heal the seam every time you did a cut. So hubby comes down in the afternoon, how's it going? And we're saying, oh, it's horrible. This is just, we can't seem to get the right settings. And he said, well, let me look at the blade. And he looked at the blade and he went, we'll take the cap off. And that was the answer to all. There you go. That's what you find out in every class. You take the cap off. And basically what happens is the way that the blade the blade cartridges or tools or whatever you want to call them work on these types of machines is that a little teeny tiny bit of the blade, only as much as you need to go through the material that you're cutting, comes out, and that curved cap is pressing against the material to keep it from popping up. So what was happening was, as it was cutting, this, you know, curved plastic thing was smoothing the clay back together again. So that was the answer to it all. I mean, it was unbelievable that that was it. And then of course there's things about, well, you don't really want to put the clay on a sticky mat. So how do we take care of that? How do we get the clay to the mat so that you're not ruining the sticky mat? That was easy, freezer paper. So that all worked great. This was the original Cameo that I worked on. We're now on Cameo 4. And these were some of the things that I did with just the Cameo. Now, the problem with the Cameo at that time was that the clearance underneath the rollers was so thin that you really had to cut, you could only cut really, really thin polymer clay. I mean, like paper thin. So that was an issue. And then around, I want to say it was maybe 2015, they came out with the Curio. And the Curio was kind of the answer to the Cricut Maker. At least that's what they thought. And it was made so that you could emboss paper, you could engrave on metal, you could draw on thicker cardstock. So there wasn't the clearance issue anymore. And you could cut up to the depth of 2 millimeter. And I'm like, this is perfect for clay. And so the Curio is what I got. And the Curio is what I still use for cutting the clay. Now on the newer machines, the Cameo 3 and the Cameo 4, they do have a higher clearance, and you can use a 2 millimeter blade with those. So theoretically, you could use the Cameos for cutting clay. But the reason that I don't is because the great thing about the Curio is this base. And you can actually pause the machine, take the platform out, check your stuff, put it back in, and it's going to go right back to the exact same place. You can't do that on a Cameo. And I'm not even sure that you could do it on a Maker. You could do it on a Maker because I know that there's a little thing that the mat butts up against, but I know with the Curio that I can do that. And on the left, you can see something that's been engraved and cut out on the Curio. The other great thing about the Curio is that it has 2 tool holders. So you can have an engraving tool in one side and a cutting tool in the other, and you can get it all done in one fell swoop.
Very cool.
When I started, I really wasn't very good at designing in the studio software. So I would take things from the Silhouette design store, like this. It was supposed to be layered paper, just for scrapbooking or whatever. And I took it, modified it a little bit, and then I was able to make a bowl out of it. So the lines were already there. I just went in and I could go in and I could mess around with it. And that's when you're first getting started, that's probably the easiest way to go. I was telling Ginger earlier, before I learned how to design, I would go to the design store and see, okay, I want a swirl that looks like this, and it's in this design that's meant for something else, and it's got a lot of other extraneous things on it, but that's the spiral I want. So I would download that design and then take it apart and use only what I need and throw away the rest. So you can do all of that with their designs. So I'm going to show you here a little engraving. Hopefully, there we go. Now, since the freezer paper as the carrier for clay, I found there's a plastic template material that's made to hold, like if you're engraving an acrylic item, you want to cut out space in the template so that the item can sit in there and not move around. That material that's without any holes in it or anything is perfect for clay, and it saves you from ruining your mat. So those have become something I really love to use a lot, but you can always, again, use the freezer paper to stick it on there. And there you can see it cut and engraved all at the same time. And these were some of the things that I started doing. The engraving to me was the most exciting. I really had a lot of fun with that. I'll tell you at this point though, it's really, unless you're, why would you want this in your studio? Well, if you were going to use it to cut clay, you would want it to be either something that's a production thing where you would cut a lot of the same shapes over and over again, say like the holly wreath ornament on the bottom there, or something that you want to put your own design or texture onto a piece of clay that you've designed that texture. But to sit there and to go through all the trouble of designing something and setting it all up, to do it just one time, really for the most part, isn't a reason to get it. The other reason to get it is all the other things that you can do with it. This software is so powerful. It is amazing what you can do with it. Now, the basic version of it is free, and you don't have to have bought a machine to use it. And then there are 3 step-ups that each one adds a little bit more ability or tools to design with. I have the business edition because, I mean, that's what I do now, which if you buy that straight out as an upgrade, I know you can get it on sale at places for like $69. I think the regular price is around 100, but they say 69. There's a designer and a designer plus that are in the middle that each give you a little bit more tools than the basic does. It really all depends on what you use it for. For me, the reason I use the business edition is because I can design and save it as an SVG or a PDF or a JPEG or whatever I want, and then use that on any other machine that I might want. So Cricut notoriously has very bad designing software. You could design on the studio software, save it as an SVG, and then bring it into your Cricut, either the Cricut Air or the Cricut Maker, and use that. Or I bring it into my professional Silver Bullet machine, or I bring it into my Glowforge. You don't really have to learn another software to be able to do all of these things. So some of the things that I do with it, and the reason I've learned more and more about this over the years is that right after I started teaching with Allison and the Curio came out, I somehow got on the Silhouette company's radar, and they worked together with a woman in Virginia to put on these big conferences, like 400 people plus, with, you know, probably 15 to 20 instructors who teach you everything about what all these machines can do. So I kept on learning more and more and more about the software that way, and finding other ways to show them what they could do with it if they wanted to work in another medium. So a couple of the things that I really like about it, if you're doing any kind of geometric type cane work, I do a lot of quilt canes, so I can actually design it and colorize it and see what the different color combinations do using they have some really easy repeat tools and some grid lines that you can line everything up with it, make it that easy. You can make your own silk screens. I was out at their sales summit one year, and they were introducing this kit that was going to be a silk screening kit. And I was like really excited about that because I thought, well, polymer clay, people love silk screens. Let's see, you know, when is that going to come out? And they were like, well, it's not going to come out until blah, blah, blah. Well, I'm standing around and I'm looking at it and I'm talking with the photographer, and she goes, man, it took us such a long time to figure out how to do that. We went to the fabric store, I don't know how many times, to buy different types of fabric to test. And I was like, well, I don't need the kit. Now I know, just go to the fabric store. So to do your own silk screens, It's just organdy fabric that I got at, Joann's, and the vinyl is called heat transfer vinyl. What it's usually used for is to put stuff on clothes, to put designs onto clothes. So it's a heat activated vinyl, which in many cases, in a couple of the brands, it's not even vinyl, and I can use it on my Glowforge. That's a whole nother conversation. So you can do your designing, like here I'm showing you where I took the design, I scaled it up for the heart, I scaled it down for the earrings, and boom, there you go. The other thing are templates and stencils. There's all kinds, depending on what you want to do with it and how long you want it to last, there's different materials that you can use. The easiest one is cardstock. If you're only going to use it for, one time, you can cut out your own cardstock. You could laminate the cardstock, cut it. That's going to make it last a little bit longer. The other thing you can use is quilting plastic. Quilting template plastic is, you can use it to cut the stencils or the templates. And my friend Lori discovered that you can use, there's plastic dividers now for like notebooks and stuff. The Target brand and the Staples really inexpensive brand both cut very well with these machines. You might have to do a couple of cuts, passes with the cuts, but you can see there on the bottom left, that swirly design. I mean, that would be perfect for using as a mask on something, and you could never cut that by hand. The other thing you can do is for packaging and displays. They have all kinds of files. These are just a few examples of the files that you can buy from the design store, and once you bought that file, you can do anything to it. You could stretch it, you could make it smaller, you could use markers and put your logo on there. It's endless. These are some of the items that I've done for some classes on Craftcast. I have a series of classes on there. On the left, you can see where I use the silk screens. On the right were templates. Same thing with the bottom. On the bottom one, I've engraved it and cut it on the curio. The other two I cut by hand, but and also the earrings up there, I do have a template, a plastic template that I sell on my Etsy site that has a bunch of different shapes on it for earrings. So you can kind of see that there's so many things you could do. My poker chip at a polymer retreat one year was my dog Vienna. That was a layered piece made for paper that was going to go on the front of like a treat box. And I just broke it up and decided what colors I want. I think I did 30 of those that year. I never could have done that by hand. On the other two items, the necklace and the ornament, those are hollow, but I took cardstock forms that have the tabs on them already, cut them out of cardstock on the machines, put them together, and then covered them with polymer.
Okay, so let me go back there.
Yeah.
On that one, you made hollow beads.
Yeah.
By using a cardstock form that you then covered with clay. Okay.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. And then all of this, all of the in-depth stuff, I've got settings, I've got links to people that you can learn videos from. All kinds of good stuff is on this PC Silly Lovers, and we can I'll put a link of it up on the Insiders thing so that you can get links. And in fact, Ginger, why don't I just send you a bunch of links of stuff that will,
because I'll put it all on the same.
Yeah,
article.
if you want to know more about it, you can go to all these different people. But I really like about it is all the different things that it can help you with in the studio. I've made grids for spacing when trying to put holes in earrings or necklaces so that you get everything to line up. Like I said, the templates and the masking are alone, that's worth
Mhm.
so much to be able to do that. And then I still do use it for clay. That necklace and the necklace, that's the necklace I'm wearing today. So this was from the first class, and that was actually done on the Cameo at that very thin setting. That's why they're all layered up. But I've seen people do so much with it. And then on top of that, they've come out with this 3D printer that I'll show you real quick. This ALTA. The great thing about this is that it's made to work with the studio software. So their idea when they created this is that, okay, so you're going to have a birthday party for your kid. So you can cut out cookie cutters that match the treat bags, that match the shirt that you made for them, and all these different things, because all of the software works together. And it is really good for that. I've used it quite a number of times. Like here you can see an example. This is one image that was used on all these different things. So this was the idea that Silhouette had behind this. Of course, I had to take it further, and I started doing designs on it. So you can design here, and then when you bring it into the, I think I have it. I think this is a video, maybe not. Is it? Yep. So you can design on there, and then when you bring it into the studio software, you have all these options of how you can bring it in. So in this case, I brought it in as a cookie cutter, and that would give me one look. And then you could go in another time and you can do it as, I forgot what the name was on that one, but here you're just going to get like flat raised places. So that's going to indent into your clay.
Like a texture plate.
Like a texture plate.
Okay. So that's for the 3D printer.
That's for their 3D printer, yeah.
But you use the same software to control all of those.
Exactly. And what I found is, you know, I was hoping that I would get more, a higher quality cookie cutter out of it. And it does tend to be, it's going to last you for a little while, but then eventually it's going to start, you know, pulling apart. It's not something that's going to last forever, like some of the 3D printed cutters that you get in the outside world, because it's not that quality. It's not that kind of quality of 3D printer. But for something that you're going to use around your studio, like I embellish glass nail files. So I've made a cutter where I can cut 4 of them at a time instead of having to drag a knife around each one of them. And if that one starts to go, you know, bonkers on me, then I just make another one. I've used it for bracelet forms. Let me grab, I think I have a couple of things in here I can show.
Now, I know that 3D printers have a reputation for being finicky, to say the least. Do you have any trouble with it?
Yes, absolutely. All machines are finicky, all of them. I mean, I've never had one that I've used that is always perfect every time. A lot of what can be the issue with the 3D printers is the filament is a PLA. And from what I've understand, it is basically a plant-based filament. And if you just let it sit out on the top of your 3D printer when you're not using it, the humidity can affect it. The heat can affect it, and that can affect how well it prints out. So it's, you know, there's always an issue. So this was, I made a form, covered it with clay, and now it's big and bulky, but it's big, but it's not bulky. Because it's very airy inside the 3D printed item.
So that's a 3D printed form that you covered with clay. Now you can bake the PLA, or is that a different filament?
Yes, you can. I did. Here's what it looked like when it 3D printed.
Okay. Back it up just a touch. Back it up just a touch. Yeah. Okay. So it's.
And then the inside, so you can set it to different qualities, which increases or lowers the amount of the honeycomb that's in between these layers.
Right. Okay, that makes sense.
Right. So that makes it lighter. You have to do what they call a little annealing.
Okay.
That will keep it from warping when you bake. Like some items, this would not change if you didn't anneal it and put clay over it and then put it in the oven. This wouldn't change, but some other items might. Like I did a channel bracelet, a cuff at one time, before I heard about the annealing, and it worked just ever so slightly. I mean, not that anybody would have noticed except for me probably, but you can anneal it so that it doesn't do that.
And annealing, I assume you mean slowly cooling, heating it and then slowly cooling it, like
Yeah,
a
you
glass?
put it, I think if I remember correctly, I have the instructions somewhere, but it's like you put the oven on 300 for an hour. Then you put the items in there, turn it off, and leave them in there for an hour.
That makes
And
sense.
then
Yeah,
and then it anneals it. And I don't know why I can't. Oh, that's why I can't see it. Now I can see everybody. Yay.
There you are.
So that was a quick overview. And now if we can get in as deep and dirty as you want to with your questions.
Okay, so I'm going to take you off spotlight then. So you're ready for questions then? Okay, so I'm going to take you off spotlight, and then when we can see everybody, yay. And so who has questions? Questions. Ramona.
So I just saw that the curio is no longer for sale. Is that true?
Yes. So they have discontinued the machine as it is.
Okay. I have a
that's all I can say. Wink, wink, as it is.
Okay.
The COVID put a real wrench into their production schedule. They still don't have a lot of inventory anywhere. And right before COVID hit, they had just introduced the Cameo 4, the Cameo Plus, which had a larger bed, and the Cameo Pro that had even larger base. And so all of their efforts were going into those 3 machines to try and feed the demand of that during COVID. And of course, as we all know, everybody became a crafter during COVID, and there were tons of curios that were sold. They will always support the tools, the blades, all that stuff will continually be supported. It uses the exact same software as the others. You can find them if you go to, anything on Facebook that has like a curio name, and I'll put that in all the links that I give Ginger. There are plenty of people in the world who buy not only the curios, but the cameos and the crickets and all that as well. And they buy them intending to use them. They don't, they sit in a box and they'll go up for sale.
Makes sense. Good.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so Sue's question. Let's see, I have the Silhouette 4 and the business edition software, but tech stuff is not my strong suit. Did you say you teach classes on a site, and what is that, and where could I, that is where I could learn to use my machine with the clay. Yeah.
Right, so I have one class on clay on the CraftCast site, which is kind of old. So that was right when the curio came out, but all the information there is good. It's just you're going to find the things that have evolved since then will be on the PC Silly site in the file section there. And there's several sites that I would suggest you to go to learn more about the software. There's some great folks out there doing a lot of things, not only with the curio, but with the design software. And I will include all of those in there. The 2 that I go to the most is Silhouette Secrets.
And these are Facebook groups?
Silhouette Secrets, she has a Facebook group, but she also has a blog. And the other one is Silhouette School. Same thing. She has a Facebook group, I believe, but I know hers is a daily blog, I believe, still. And those are great places to learn Yes, perfect. You got it. That's the girl. That's the girl. Ellie runs Silhouette Secrets, and she has devoted herself to learning all the things that you can do with the curio. So she has that's other materials that she does. She does a lot of engraving on lucite. It's great for engraving on lucite. I did Christmas ornaments on there for a while before I ended up, I was the brewery that I originally sold the hop earrings to. Once we figured out that the curio could engrave acrylic, we went to them and said, do you want us to do something with that? And we did. And for 2 years, I was running 2 or 3 curios in November and December to fill the demand. And that's actually why I ended up buying a Glowforge, was because I couldn't keep up with it on the curio. Also on Craftcast, Cindy Pope, she's a PMC artist, but she's got an awful lot of really good classes that get into the design part of it. She was always more into the, I'm going to do something original design. And there's a boot camp, I believe it was in the 2022 boot camp that she did. I just watched again a couple of weeks ago, and it's really good for showing you how to draw with using the tools to draw if you can't draw, because that's what I can't do. I can't draw, but she's figured out what tools will help you get the look that you want to use.
Excellent. Did that cover it, Sue? Cool. Thank you. Next question. Esther, go for it.
Me now? Yes.
Yeah, yep, go for it.
Okay. Is it possible to cut cured clay in the curio?
I've tried it several times. You can only cut really thin clay that's already been cured, because the force that's needed to go through cured clay obviously is so much different than it is to go through raw clay. But I have used a third-party source to engrave on cured clay, and you can, it's just, why would you, when you can get that shape raw and then bake it? Was there something in particular that you were thinking about doing that would be?
No, actually, I bought the curio for that reason, and then I discovered that you couldn't cut the cured clay. So, but I use it for stencils, and I've never tried to cut clay, raw clay. I mean,
Yeah, that really is. I mean, for me, that was just a game changer. I just thought that was the greatest thing. But I will say, there are machines. You've got to learn to be a little patient when they mess up. And, some days I'll cut something all day long and not have a problem. And then the next morning I go in and all of a sudden I'm having a problem, because I don't know, there's so many more variables. It's raw clay, so humidity is affecting it, heat is affecting it. If there's a big change in the weather, the clay that you cut yesterday is going to be different than the clay that you cut today. So it's, there are learning curves. I'm not going to say you're going to walk into it and immediately get perfect results every time.
and another question.
Go for it.
If you don't have the designer edition, is it possible to open another file from another program into the Silhouette Studio program?
There's different files that you can open at different levels of the software. And off the top of my head, I really am not sure which is which, but if you go to the Silhouette America website, there is a comparison that will show you what each one of the software tools are unlocked at each level. I know you can do everything in the business edition. In the business edition, you can open anything and you can save it to almost practically anything.
And it doesn't sound like it's terribly expensive either.
No, it's not. Like I said, if you just had the free and then you upgraded to the business, On their site, I think it says $99, but I know Swing Design normally has it on sale for like $69. And then sometimes Silhouette will run a sale on the software upgrades as
Gotcha.
well.
Carolina says that cutting baked clay is also done. She says she knows it's done on the Brother Scan and Cut.
Yes.
Okay.
I have not worked with a Brother Scan and Cut, so I can't answer anything about it. I'm guessing that you could also do it on a Maker, because the Maker has a tool holder that has more force on it. Now, the Cameo 4 was supposed to be the answer to the Maker, and they have a dual cartridges, and one motor is one way and the other motor is the other way. I have not tried to cut baked clay on that, but it might be possible that you could do it on that. It's just, for me, I don't really see the necessity to do it baked when you have the ability to cut it into the shape that you want before you bake it.
Right. Sherry, did you have a question on the same topic or different topic?
It's different from the cutting
Okay,
the clay.
and I'm going to grab Carolina, because I think, Carolina, were you going to talk about the same topic?
Yeah,
Okay.
Katarina Wikholm, she uses the scan and cut to cut baked clay. I know she does that. She makes a lot of nice things. The scan and cut, the DX models, it has an auto blade and it can cut 3 millimeters thick. So I know she cuts baked clay on it.
Good. Okay.
Frequently.
I have heard that. I just have never had any, I haven't even ever seen one in person.
There's one.
There's one.
Okay. Sherry, go for it.
I missed what was the paper besides freezer paper that you used to put the clay on?
So the other material that I use is the website is Craft Chameleon. And if you go on there and look for the plastic templates for Curio, she has just the blank templates for sale. And the thing that's great about it is it's got the holes in it that fit the base. And so again, you're not going to have any movement issues at all. It's kind of a pebbly plastic. So it's just enough to grab the clay and hold it there while it's cutting, so that it doesn't move around and it's not going to ruin your mat. But the bad thing about the Curio, and I have talked to everybody and their brother at Silhouette that I can, and they don't want to listen to me, is the mat, the cutting mat that has the grids on it and everything and the stickiness on it is only glued in place in 2 places. And if you cut through that mat, which is not hard to do when you're testing settings, basically every time you hit that spot, the blade's going to catch on it, because now it gets air underneath it. So this saves that, because it sits right over the top of the cutting mat. You can still see the grids to line everything up, but you can dig into it as much as you want. You're never going to cut all the way through it. Well, you would if you kept on doing it over and over again, but they're very inexpensive. I want to say there may be like $1.50 each. And she has those. She is starting to go to transition the bake business, but I do carry them on my Etsy site as well. So if she is out of them for any reason, you can go over to my Etsy site and see if I have it, but I would rather you go to her first because she's my source.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Carolina says, how about the plastic used for stencils? Would that work?
Yes, that would work. The difference is this already has the holes put into it so that it's going to fit right onto that base and it's not going to move. You would have to kind of guess where to put them. If you were, well, you couldn't even, because they would be outside. They're outside the cutting mat. So you would have to do it by hand, and you would be guessing this is laser cut with the holes exactly where they're supposed to be. But yes, if you were, it needed to, you could.
Good. Good, thank you. Judy. You're on mute still.
I'm horrified at putting raw clay into the machine and having it gum up and destroy the machine itself. Can you address the settings that you might suggest for doing that?
The settings that I would suggest for doing that are all on that PC Silly Lovers Facebook group in the files section, because obviously it depends on how thick your clay is and all, which blade you use. The one thing I will say is every case, no matter whether it's a Cameo or the Curio, if it's a deep cut blade or the regular ratchet blade, the cap has to come off. You just unscrew that white cap. That way it opens up all the way to the, the blade all the way up, and you don't have it pressing down on the clay to cause issues. So that was the big secret of everything, was taking that blade cap off. But it's not going to get, it's really not, there's nothing it can get into that would mess it up, because the only place it's really going to get into is into the blade. And believe you me, if it were going to get in it and gunk it up, the 6 or 7 years I've been working with it and testing it, it would have happened, and it hasn't. Any place it's going to get, you can remove it from. The one thing I would say though is so the Curio comes with a ratchet blade and 2 embossing blades, or they're not really blades, tools. One is a fine embosser and the other is a wide embosser. I would not recommending using those with clay, because those items, if the clay gets up in there, you can't get it out because you can't clean it in any way. You can get the clay out of the ratchet blade. The other tool that they have is the stippling and etching tool. Again, I would not recommend that with clay. Same thing, no way to get the cap off to clean the clay out. The third party company that I use and the PMC people use is Shomas Creations, CHOMAS, I believe, Shomas Creations. And she makes engravers that are, there's a blunt, there's the original, there's the precision one. Those are great for working with the clay. I've even, I played around with it a couple of months ago, and there is a pin holder that tool that you can buy that goes with it to obviously use pins and stuff with. I've used it with the ball tool. So if you have a ball stylus, you've got all those different sizes that you could use to engrave with. I've used a pin tool that I make that fits into it because it's in a mechanical pencil base, and I've used that as well. So there are ways to get around everything.
And I appreciate you addressing the deep cut blade, because I got one of those as a gift because I thought it would be more helpful. So thank you.
Yeah, it will be for the thicker material, but for and you'll see on the chart when you go to the Facebook group, if it's fairly thin, I still use the ratchet blade. It's only when it gets to a certain thickness that I use the deep cut blade. And the deep cut blade also has its issues because it's a dual, there's 2 rings. So you go from 1 to 10 on one ring and then 11 to 20 on the other. That gets you up to the full 2 millimeters. And sometimes those rings get off center. And so you kind of have to go all the way until it stops and then count your way back to get to the right setting on that.
Good, thank you.
You're welcome.
Quick question, then I'm going to grab Linda. Which clay brands have you tried? Are there any that you would not use? Do you want stiff clay? Do you want soft clay?
I have tried all. A couple of weeks ago, I was doing a project and I was using Cernet translucent. And I was a little disappointed because it did move around a little bit. Yeah, and I think it's just because there's so much softener in that translucent to make it translucent that you're going to have to maybe really roll it down to get it to really stick. But that's the only clay that I've really ever had move on me a lot. Souffle, in terms of the cleanness of the cut, for some reason seems to have the cleanest cut. And you would think that that would move around as well because it's a different, but it has a nice clean cut to it. But I've done everything. I've done Primo, I've done Fimo, I've done Cato. It's all basically the same thing.
Perfect. Great. Thank you. Linda. Oh,
Hi,
Linda, you just, yeah, there you are.
I'm sorry, I just jumped in because I just had to do a demo for another guild and I was like, oh my God.
You're fine.
What was the name of the Facebook group, Mag, that you had mentioned?
Yeah, PC Silly Lovers, SILIE.
Terrific, thank you.
You're welcome. I look forward to seeing you there, my friend.
I know, and I got your.
Did you get them?
Yes, thank you.
Yay! Libby Mills did a demonstration at the Clay, Connecticut virtual retreat last weekend. And I made for them, and then they forced my friends, and then they forced me to put it on my website. You can make, and I got this from the Silhouette people, because they use, so when you cut vinyl, you need to weed out the parts that you don't want to use after you've cut them. And there's all different kinds of weeding tools out there. And one of my fellow teachers at the conference one year showed me how she made her own pen tool by taking a mechanical pencil and putting a sewing needle in it. And now you have a retractable pen tool. So I made them, I gave them to my friends. Libby used it in her demonstration last Sunday. I'm sitting down here in the Glowforge part of this studio working on silk screens, and all of a sudden I hear my Etsy cha-ching, 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 and I'm like, what the heck is going on? And so I went over to Facebook and I was looking on the announcements to see if somebody had mentioned it on a group or something. And all of a sudden I got a message from Carol Monahan who said, your Etsy's gonna blow up. Libby just sold your pen tool. And I went, too late, sweetie. It is already blown up. And I think all in all, I think I ended up selling like 33 of them. And Linda bought like half of the stock I had on hand.
It's a good one.
I had to run out and get more pencils and more needles, but I got them all out within the week.
It's very useful, very useful.
I like it a lot. It's really good for working with templates, because those of you who use templates, you know, if you use our regular like Kemper needle tool that all of us have used, the change from the point happens very quickly. So you have a deeper V. And when you go into a thick lucite template, where the pen lands isn't necessarily where it rolls around the outside or inside of your template. And that's why this is so much better, is because number one, it's so much thinner that V is so minuscule that it doesn't really make a difference, but it's great for running around the inside of templates.
Right. Good, thank you.
And it's a good weeding tool too.
Tom. Oh, you're still on mute.
Still muted, all right.
There you are.
I was, with the different clays you were mentioning, have you tried cosplay?
I have not tried cosplay because I have not bought cosplay myself yet to try.
Okay.
So I don't know what the Ginger, maybe you can tell me, is there any big difference in terms of density or
Not
stickability
really.
or anything like that? Then it
No,
probably would work.
It feels very much like Fimo, really.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't look the
Sometimes.
same, but it feels the same.
Sometimes it gets sticky if you're,
Yeah.
that might have been a.
Well, the thing is with what I found with the Cernet, you know, it's okay to have a little bit of stickiness, because then it's not going to move around on you. But then you can get to the point where it has too much plasticizer in it, where it just doesn't stick down well enough to that plastic. But I did find that it worked better with the freezer paper. So and when you use the freezer paper, you're putting the clay on the waxy side and the paper goes down on the sticky mat. So the wax held the Cernit translucent better than the plastic template did.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Perfect. Good. Good. Thank you. Sounds good. Well, I've learned a lot.
Well, I
Because
hope I
just-
answered everybody's questions that were thinking about maybe using one or who had one and wasn't sure how to use it. And like I said, if you go over to the Facebook group, you're going to find all kinds of stuff in the
Right,
files that will really help you out a lot. And if you have an issue or a question, obviously I'm monitoring it all the time to answer questions about that. And I will make sure that we get all the links in there that I think you
Yeah,
guys
definitely send me
would
the
need.
links. One more question. Linda has another question.
It's an easy question. This is being recorded, so, okay. And so where would we be able to go to listen to it when it's available? will
As
you
soon
let
as
us
I
know?
get it edited, I will put it up in Insiders in the section that has all the convos from all the previous convos in it.
Oh, okay, thank you.
So it'll be in there. Yeah. And by the way, if anybody, just so everybody knows, all of the old convo, the previous convos we've had, the recordings are in there as well. So if there's any that you missed, you can get them as well. So
Okay, thank you.
From Jenny to everybody, do I need more tools?
and another obsession. Yes.
Yes,
you
of course
do.
you do. Jenny, it would help, just the software alone would help you playing with your quilt blocks. Because you can sit there and you can pick, if you, I don't remember.
I have
which-
software like that.
Oh, you already have it that you use? Is it a
I
quilt
have-
quilt?
Oh, sorry, my phone's ringing.
That's okay.
I use electric quilt.
Ah, okay, yeah.
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 Sorry.
Cool.
It's
Of
fun.
the
What I like about using the software to design the canes, especially the quilt canes, is so, and I want to say it's Designer Plus, but I'm not positive, don't hold me to it. So one of the tools that opens up past basic is the eyedropper for the color. So I can bring in, say I go to design seats and I see a color combination that I like, and I want to test that on a trip around the world quilt. I can bring the image, take a screen share of the design seeds picture, bring that into the software, make all my little square shapes, and then I can use the eyedropper to fill those with that color from those design seeds. I also could put in my own color using the codes that are for colors. So I can sit there, and in the time it would take me to mix clay and to play with the different combinations, I can do that all virtually before I even start to color the clay and decide how much I need, because I extrude, and so I know how much extrusions to make and everything. So I can take those, say it's 4 colors in the one cane, I can very easily go in and change the amount of each color everywhere and get all the different iterations in no time at all to decide, okay, how do I really want this to look? Otherwise I would be sitting there and cutting out little squares of each of these colors and playing with them on my, on my desktop. And you don't really need to do that. You can do that all in the software.
Now you're making me want this.
Well, the other big thing too is, like, if you're not comfortable with the technical side of it, let's say, but you draw and you have a design that you want to engrave into your clay. So you can draw it, take a picture of it, bring it into the software, and then the software will trace that and give you the cut lines that you need for it. And there it is. You're easy to, and you can manipulate, there are things on there called nodes. So if you open up the nodes and see where all the nodes are, you can move nodes around to change the shapes as much or little as you need them to do. There's the replicate area, the replicate tool, and I believe that is Designer Plus, is amazing. It's so helpful in so many different ways. And that's a whole class on itself. I just find it all so helpful to make, like I said, the tools that you're going to use, like stencils and templates and things like that, not even just cutting the clay. Obviously that's exciting and very interesting that you can engrave your own design into the clay. But it's the other things that you can do with it as well.
Perfect. Perfect. Okay. Wonderful. Send me those links and I will post all of this, and I'll get it posted up for everybody to look through. Thank you everyone for being here. Thank you, Mags, for being awesome and explaining everything to us. And
thank you.
Thank you so much, guys. And I will see you all later.
Toodles. Thanks everybody for spending the time with me today. I appreciate it.